king. And you already have a son. So he'll become the king. So the benediction of my daughter won't be fulfilled if she becomes your queen, because you already have a son. So he was struck by Cupid's arrow, and he became very morose. When he went back to his kingdom, Bhisma Dev recognized, my father is not normal. So he didn't ask his father directly. He asked the ministers, why is my father feeling despondent like this? And they said he was struck by Cupid's arrow, and he wants to marry the fisherman's daughter, a fisherman's daughter. And the fisherman said, no, because you already have a son, and your son will become the king. And my daughter is destined to have her son become the king. So Bhisma went to the fisherman and said, this is what I understand. My father wants to marry your daughter. You're saying no because Parashara Muni gave this benediction. So I'll make a vow to you that I'll won't become the king. He said, still the answer is no. Why? Because if you marry and you have a son before my daughter's son, then your son, by law, would become the king. He said, no problem. I won't become married. I won't become king, and I won't become married, so my father can marry your daughter. He said, okay. My daughter can marry your father. And so the marriage was arranged. And grandfather Bhisma, so she had some more involved. There were two sons. Santanu was the king, and Satyavati is the daughter of the fisherman. They had two sons, and they both died before they had children. There's a story of how that happened, but they both died. So then Satyavati has no son. And so an arrangement was made so that the two wives of one of those sons were going to enter into the funeral pyre, the fire of their husband, because they were very attached to their husband. That was a practice in those days for women very attached to their husband. They would follow their husband so very faithfully, enter into the fire of burning their body. And Satyavati said, please don't do that, because then there'll be no king. So you're attached to your now deceased husband, who is my son. I'm attached too, but the kingdom has to continue. So according to Vedic law, if the husband is unable to conceive a child with his queen or wife, then the elder brother may conceive a child with the wife who is unable to conceive a child. And they were thinking, oh, the elder brother is Bhisma Dev. Different mother, but the elder than Satyavati. So they agreed. But when Satyavati requested her stepson, not her son, but not her biological son, but Ganga's son, would you produce children with these two ladies so that the kingly line can continue? And he said, Mother, I can't do that. I've taken a vow. I won't have children. I won't become king. And I won't have children. So what to do? He said, you have another son. According to Vedic law, there is another son. And that other son, his name is Vyasadeva. We haven't even gotten to what we're in the Bhagavatam yet, but just who is, so it's a nice story. It's a little involved. So before she was Satyavati, the daughter of the fisherman, she was known by a different name. Her name was Matsya Gandha. Now you know there are Leela avatars. One of those Leela avatars of Krishna is Buddha. One of the Leela avatars is Parashuram with the chopper. One of the Leela avatars is Lord Ramachandra with the bow and arrow. One of the other Leela avatars is named Matsya, the fish. So Matsya Gandha. Gandha means fragrance. Her body smelled like a fish. So they gave her the name Matsya Gandha. And her father, Matsya Gandha's father, thought it might be very auspicious if she conducts the occupation of someone that carries people across the river with a boat, if she was able to transport a sadhu, a holy man, across the river in her boat, she may get some blessing from the sadhu. So Matsyagandha was a boat lady. So one day, the same sage, Parashara Muni, got on her boat. They were crossing the Ganga, and he was doing some astrological calculation, and he calculated very quickly that this was the time for an incarnation of the Lord to appear. Very auspicious moment. So he asked Matsyagandha, would you be willing to be the mother of an incarnation of the Lord? She said, what are you talking about? She said, there's a procedure and you can become the mother. She said, well, I can't become a mother, I'm not married. And Parashara Muni said, no problem. There's a way by which you can become pregnant and not lose your virginity. And she said, yeah, but if I'm walking around pregnant for 9 months, people are going to figure it out. He said, no problem. There's a way by which the pregnancy can be matured in a matter of hours. And so people will not know that you became the mother before you were married. And she said, well, here we are in the middle of the river and everyone will see what's going on. And he said, no problem. I have mystic powers and I can create an island that will be invisible to everybody else. And there we can have union and the child will be born instantly and no worries. She's like, yikes. But, he's a sadhu, Parashara Muni. So she agreed. A child was conceived. The child was almost quickly born on this island. And the son was Vyasa. Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedas, the son of Parashara Muni, and Matsyagandha. So Vyasa was very pleased and said to his mother, Satyavati, if you ever need me, just call my name and I'll be there. He appeared in his fully matured adult form. Very mystical. And he left. Parashara Muni was very pleased, and he said, because you agreed to this important service, I give you 2 benedictions. This bad smell of your body, you'll become very fragrant. The 3. You become very beautiful, and your son will become an incarnation. Your son will become the next king. 3 benedictions. So she went back and told her father, Dad, you're not going to believe what happened today. Let me tell you what happened today. And he said, I can tell from the fragrance, it's now this super, for miles, her body was fragrant. And that's one of the things that the king was attracted to. And then he saw her beauty, and that was it. And she's very, very beautiful. So her father said, that's it. The reason for having you become a person that carries people across the river in a boat is now fulfilled. You got a benediction from a sadhu. And not only that, your son will become a king. So Bhisma knew about that. Nobody else knew about it. I mean, Satyavati knew about it, and her father knew about it. So Bhisma reminded Satyavati, his stepmother, you have another son who's elder to these two, your sons, that died. And that other son is Vyas. You just call Vyas, and he can produce a son, and the lineage of kings can go on. Knew that. The two ladies whose father, the next king, didn't get to rule because he died early, they thought it was Bhishma Dev would be the father of their children who would become the next king. So they agreed. Reluctantly, but they agreed. They were very surprised when it wasn't Bhishma Dev that came in their chamber. It was this very intense-looking ascetic, and there's other descriptions of what he looked like. The first one was terrified when she saw Vyas, and that's the wife that produced Dhritarashtra as blind. She closed her eyes when she saw him. She became blind. The son became blind. The second one became pale. So he was a little sickly. Pandu. So grandfather Bhishma then became, in the absence of Pandu, so Pandu became the king. Pandu had 5 sons, and their grandfather Bhishma, this great hero, became their father. The grandfather took care of these 5 boys like they were his children, so his grandfather Bhishma. Great warrior, great statesman, great devotee of Krishna, and at the end of the Kurukshetra battle, he was lying on the battlefield with so many arrows drilled through his body. He was just lying on a bed of arrows, bloodied and painful, and just lying there. And after the Kurukshetra battle was over, the 5 brothers plus Krishna came to see grandfather Bhishma and pay their respects because he was going to depart this world. He did several things in this chapter before. He, Bhishma, pacified Yudhisthira, the elder of the 5 brothers, about what had just happened, the whole battle. And he explained things without going through how he explained. He explained things in such a way that the heart of Yudhisthira was convinced that the battle was not fought because he was greedy for a kingdom. It was fought because it's what Krishna wanted. Prior to that, Yudhisthira didn't want to do the battle. Arjuna didn't want to do the battle, but Krishna wanted the battle. Krishna wanted so many demoniac kings to be removed from the burden of the earth, so a proper king could rule the earth. Because it was getting time for Krishna's pastimes to end, he wanted a proper king. Many things were said by Bhishma, pacified the heart of Yudhisthira. Then Yudhisthira accepted, okay, Krishna wants me to rule the world. Can you give me instructions, grandfather, Bhishma? how to rule the world. So that was a good lesson, how to be a suitable king. Details and details and details and details. And then his mood starts to move towards seeing Krishna and appreciating Krishna's position. He's the creator of everything, the maintainer of everything, etc., etc. And he's very kind. He's come here before me at my time of departure to satisfy my desire. He then considered the movement of the sun was starting to move in the northerly direction. And according to the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that's a time when yogis who are able to leave their body at will leave their body. It's when it's a time that's suitable for the soul to ascend to the transcendental realm, or to the heavenly or the transcendental realm. And so he stopped speaking. He withdrew his subtle senses and consolidated them within the mind, and then concentrated his mind on Krishna. And now he's saying many things about Krishna, including that feature of Krishna that he most appreciated. That feature of Krishna was Krishna showing Bhisma Deva and showing the world that Krishna was, above all other considerations, the topmost principle of dharma for Krishna, or duty, was to give protection to his devotee. Affection, Krishna's affection for his devotee, Bhakta Vatsala, is more important to him than anything. Now Krishna promises is in the Bhagavad Gita, that one who surrenders unto me, I will protect them. Bhisma Deva wanted Krishna to show it. So how did Bhisma Deva do? He took a vow. By the end of today's fighting, either I will kill Arjuna, Krishna's dearmost friend, or Krishna will break his vow, and Krishna will protect Arjuna and defeat me. So it worked out in such a way that Krishna broke his vow. He took the chariot wheel of Arjuna that had fallen off his chariot, picked it up, and with his arm raised, charged at Grandfather Bhisma to smash Grandfather Bhisma with a chariot wheel. Now, he doesn't need a chariot wheel. He doesn't need anything. But he was demonstrating his willingness to protect his devotee above even keeping his word. And for a Kshatriya, keeping one's word is foremost. Like Bhisma. Bhisma wouldn't break his vow because he took a vow. So, he's now, this where we are. He is Krishna's before him. He has this vision, and I'll read 2-3 verses. He has a vision of Krishna running full speed towards the end of the day's battle, ready to smash Grandfather Bhisma with Arjuna's chariot wheel. Fulfilling my desire, this is text 37, and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. Now he was running so fast, the outer garment was flying behind him, and he didn't even notice, it just fell off. And he wasn't paying any attention. He was wanted to smash Bhisma, his great devotee. It's a chivalrous, loving exchange. May he, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield he charged me as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered, and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds of Bhisma's arrows. Yeah. At the moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot driver of Arjuna, who stood with a whip in his right hand, a bridle rope in his left, who was very careful to give protection to Arjuna's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms after death. Yeah. There's the previous verse, he says. I'll read the previous verse. Yeah. On the battlefield, where Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hooves of the horses, and because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna. So Krishna is standing before him. It was said earlier, much earlier, that Bhishma Dev was in full knowledge of everything about Krishna, and he also had a particular devotion for his four-armed form of Narayan. That was his deity, is a four-armed form of Narayan. That's the way he was envisioning Krishna. So he's now wishing to attain Vaikuntha, and he's appreciating all the other persons who saw him directly. They didn't just attain Sayuja, which is merging with the Supreme, but they attained the original forms in the spiritual world. How benedictory was seeing Krishna in that situation. So these are the opposition party. These are bad people. These are the persons that Krishna wanted to eliminate from the surface of the earth, because how bad they were. But seeing Krishna, because Krishna is so powerful and so merciful, they attained their original forms after death. I'm going to read purport. A pure devotee of the Lord constantly sees the presence of the Lord within himself because of being transcendentally related by loving service. That's a devotee. Such a pure devotee cannot forget the Lord for a moment. This is called trance. The mystic yogi tries to concentrate upon the supersoul by controlling the senses from all other engagements, and thus he ultimately attains samadhi. A devotee more easily attains samadhi or trance by constantly remembering the Lord's personal feature, along with his holy name, fame, pastimes, etc. Therefore, the concentration of the mystic yogi and that of the devotee are not on the same level. The concentration of the mystic is mechanical, whereas that of the pure devotee is natural in pure love and spontaneous affection. Bhishma Dev was a pure devotee, and as a military marshal, he constantly remembered the battlefield feature of the Lord as Partha Sarati. Partha Sarati, the chariot driver of Arjuna. Therefore the Lord's pastime is Partha Sarati, is also eternal. The pastimes of the Lord, beginning from his birth at the prison house of Kamsa, up to the Maushala Lila at the end, all move one after another in all the universes, just as the clock hand moved from one point to another. And in such pastimes, his associates like the Pandavas and Bhisma are constant, eternal companions. So, Bhisma Dev never forgot the beautiful feature of the Lord as Partha Sarati, which even Arjuna could not see. Arjuna couldn't see it because he was behind Krishna. Bhisma Dev could see it because he was in front of Krishna. The chariot driver cannot be seen by the charioteer. The person on the other side can see the chariot driver. Arjuna was behind the beautiful Parthasarathi, while Bhisma Dev was just in front of the Lord. As far as the military feature of the Lord is concerned, Bhisma Dev observed this with more relish than Arjuna. There's more to the purport, but it's in earlier discussions that the way that the criterion by which the elevation status of a devotee is understood is in terms of rasa, or the mellow or the taste that one has in their relationship with Krishna. The particular mellow or sthai bhava, the steady ecstasy of Bhisma Dev is service, dasya, or dasa. Arjuna's relationship with Krishna is sakha, he's a friend. So service is included and some further intimacy. But in Bhishma's case, in addition to being the mood of being the servant of Krishna, there's this nice science taught by Rupa Goswami where there are secondary rasas that enhance and nourish the primary rasa. And one of those 7 secondary rasas is chivalry. There's 6 others. So sometimes the way that it works is, it's just like consider a river and it's moving downstream. I speak about this, I think of being in Guyana. There's this river. To cross from one side of the river by speedboat, it takes about an hour and a half. It's a really wide river. And, at different times of the day, it's best, the river crossing is best made early in the morning, because as the day goes on, the waves get more rough. So it's advisable that the boat crossings are really busy in the mornings. So the river is moving and moving and moving. That's a steady thing. And then here comes a wave, and here comes another wave, and here comes another wave, and the mixing of the waves, in addition to the flow of the river, make the movement of the river. So bhakti rasa is compared to, there's certain steady moods of service or relationship with Krishna. And then there's some smaller waves that move, and they combine together to make varieties of tastes or mellows or enjoyments in the exchange of love. So one of those 7 secondary rasas, and there's subcategories, is chivalry. So chivalry, Prabhupada gives this example. Sometimes a king keeps in his court a wrestler because kings like a tussle. So, when they're not wrestling, they're just, it's a servant and the master, but the servant is meant, there's intimacy in those dealings, and when they're wrestling, they speak harsh things, and they thrash the other one. The wrestler thrashes the king, and the king likes it, and the king thrashes the wrestler back, and they wrestle, and then they're friends, although one's the servant. So the other's a master. So like that, sometimes those who are in the mood of a servant like Bhisma, he takes the position of in opposition to Krishna because Krishna likes it. Like the wrestler in the court of the king. Powerful guy. The king is the king, and the wrestler is supposed to give him a good tussle. But the king is the king. So Krishna is the supreme. The servitude mood doesn't leave Bhisma, but he likes when Bhishma Dev is throwing sharpened arrows and pierce his body. He likes. Now, other people he doesn't like when they try to harm him. But he likes when our Bhishma tries to harm him. Anyway, that's a secondary rasa. And he's absorbed in this particular passage. He's about to leave his body, and he is absorbed in this secondary rasa. He's praying that feature in being in opposition to Krishna, seeing the blood from my sharpened arrows on his body, and seeing that image of his hair and his face made ashen from the dust of the hooves, and the beads of perspiration are rolling down his face. He's got a chariot wheel and is ready to smash me, and he's got his cloth streaming behind him, and it falls off, and may that image be fixed in my mind as I leave my body. It's an ecstasy for Bhishma. All the soldiers and persons on the battlefield attained their original spiritual form, like the Lord, after their death, because by the causeless mercy of the Lord, they were able to see him face to face on that occasion. The conditioned souls rotating in the evolutionary cycle from the aquatics up to the form of Brahma are all in the form of Maya, or the form obtained by one's own actions, karma, and awarded by material nature, prakriti. The material forms of the conditioned souls are all foreign dresses. And when the conditioned soul becomes liberated from the clutches of the material energy, he attains his original form. The impersonalists want to attain the impersonal Brahman effulgence of the Lord, but that is not at all congenial to the living sparks, parts and parcels of the Lord. Therefore, the impersonalists again fall down and get material forms, which are all false to the spirit soul. A spiritual form, like the Lord's, either two-handed or four-handed, is attained by the devotees of the Lord, either in the Vaikuntha or in the Goloka planet, according to the original nature of the soul. This form, which is 100% spiritual, is the Svarup of the living being, and all living beings who participated in the battlefield of Kurukshetra on both sides attained their Svarup, as confirmed by Bhishma Dev. So, Lord Sri Krishna was not merciful only to the Pandavas, he also was merciful to the other parties because all of them attained the same result. Bhishma Dev wanted the same facility also, and that was his prayer to the Lord, although his position as an associate of the Lord was assured in all circumstances. The conclusion is that whoever dies looking on the personality Godhead, within or without, attains his swarup, which is the highest perfection of life. So, wow, this is, Bhagavatam is the graduate study of Bhagavad Gita. And of course, Bhagavad Gita gives the undergraduate level understanding, and that is yam yam vapi swaram Tyajatante kalevaram. Tyajatante, at the end, ante, when you give up your body at the end, whatever the mind is absorbed in at the time of death, that state you will attain. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. And here, it's even those who are inimical to Krishna and are seeing the form of Krishna at the time of their death, they'll attain the spiritual form because they're seeing the form of Krishna. Now that's really amazing. So one might think, fantastic, let me become an enemy of Krishna, get killed by Krishna in a battlefield, and get my original spiritual form. That's the wrong conclusion. First of all, it's not likely to happen. And more importantly, the advice that Krishna gives is not that one. The advice that Krishna gives is become my devotee. That is, engage in that which is favorable. Because devotional service means to do that which is favorable to Krishna. So those who are on the battlefield that were unfavorable to Krishna, Krishna was still kind to them anyways. But those that are favorable to Krishna, as Prabhupada is saying here, Bhishma Dev doesn't need any benediction or anything. He's already situated as an eternal associate of Krishna. So that's the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita's teaching, and it's the confirmed here in this message by Grandfather Bhishma. The grandfather, back to our starting point, who was Grandfather Bhishma anyways? One of the things one can say about him is he's one of the 12 great authorities of all times, spiritual authorities. And how do we know that? Well, it's spoken by one of the 12, named Yamaraj, and Yamaraj says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 6th canto, in the 6th canto, Yamaraj says that there are 12 great authorities, and he in the list he names Bhishma. So he's the upcoming verses that isn't finished speaking. Upcoming verses he's going to demonstrate. He understands everything about Krishna. He understands his position as the creator, maintainer, annihilator. He understands his friendly disposition towards his devotee. He understands he's equally disposed towards everyone, while at the same time kindly disposed to his devotee, because the devotee is kindly disposed towards him. And he understands the very elevated position of Krishna's associates in Vrindavan. That's coming up tomorrow evening. Grandfather Bhishma is speaking about the love that Krishna has for the resident of Vrindavan. Now he loves Arjuna. He knows that he loves Grandfather Bhishma himself, He said that now 3 times in this chapter. It's just his causeless affection. He's showing his causeless affection to Grandfather Bhisma by being in front of me at the time of leaving my body. He's showing his affection to me by taking up the chariot wheel of Arjuna and breaking his vow in order to protect Arjuna from me. He's enjoying the sharpened arrows and the piercing of his body. He's enjoying that. And I'm doing it because I know that he's enjoying it, which is a little contradictory, because who enjoys seeing the person they love so much being pierced by arrows and having wounds coming from your bow and arrow, your bow, your equipment, your warrior equipment. But he's doing it because it's pleasurable to Krishna. And his happiness is Krishna's happiness. And Krishna's enjoying. It said specifically, earlier verse in this chapter, when Krishna came to the battlefield with the Pandavas, just by seeing Krishna, whatever pain he was feeling, gone. And how to have, it's not that, he had a material body. But when you have material body and there's a puncture in your material body, you feel it. He was in a lot of pain. So how does the pain go away? Pain goes away by his consciousness being absorbed in something higher or transcendental, and then the sensation of pain is not going to the material plane. The consciousness is fully on the spiritual plane, and then the experience of pain subsides. The pain is there, the wound is there, but his consciousness is in a transcendental position. It works the opposite way also. We're just discussing with the Chinese devotees. When Krishna is in Dwarka and he's in the Royal Assembly Hall, Sudharma Assembly Hall, and a messenger comes from 20,000 kings who were imprisoned by Jarasandha. Jarasandha was planning to have a human sacrifice, to sacrifice all 20,000 kings in a big yajna, human sacrifice, and offer to Mahabhairava, a form of Lord Shiva. And the kings were in a lot of anxiety. They knew his plan. So they requested a Brahmana messenger to go to Krishna and ask Krishna to rescue them. And Krishna was very pleased. He wants to protect those who are surrendered unto him. Amazingly, at the same time as the messenger came, in comes Narada Muni. So everyone stopped what they were doing. They honored Narada Muni because he's a Brahmana and a great personality. Krishna worshipped him and then inquired, Narada, what brought you here? So Narada explained his reason for coming. Narada's reason for coming was at the request of Yudhisthira, the elder of the Pandavas. You with me? Yudhisthira is the elder of the Pandava brothers. They were living in an adjacent kingdom called Indraprastha. There's details of how that happened. And Yudhisthira wanted Krishna to come and attend a ceremony, be the chief guest at a ceremony where he was then to be anointed as the next king. So Krishna turned to his other cousin, or another cousin named Uddhava, said, what should I do? Here's 2 requests. What should I do? Now he could have said, you can just divide yourself into 2 Krishnas and do both. but he didn't say that. He said, you should finish Jarasandha first. Because Jarasandha has these 20,000 kings in prison, ready to sacrifice them. You should defeat Jarasandha. There's like a whole thing of, he makes a plan of how it should be done, etc., 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 etc. So the first order of business is to finish Jarasandha. And to finish Jarasandha, you should go to Indraprastha, get Bhima, who is equal to him in fighting, to engage Jarasandha in fighting. But because they're equal, even Bhima can't defeat him. But if you're present, then Bhima will be able to defeat him. Just by your being present. So that was the plan. And then once the 20,000 kings were freed because Jarasandha has been killed, then this coronation ceremony could take place. So the arrangement was made. With just a handful of people remaining back in Dwaraka, big, massive procession to go to Indraprastha. Everyone was received. There's a very elaborate description of how they received. And finally, the person who asked him to come, Yudhisthira, is seated with Krishna in a solitary place. And Yudhisthira he loses it. He gets so immersed in joy and absorption in being in Krishna's presence. All the protocols and all the things that, cultured people do when you receive an elevated guest, his mind went blank. He didn't do anything. He was just speechless and stunned. So, in other words, his consciousness left the physical plane and went entirely to the spiritual plane. All of that was to give a different example. Then Grandfather Bhisma, as soon as he saw Krishna, his consciousness left the body and his consciousness was totally absorbed in Krishna. Then thus his pain went away, or he was not feeling pain. No discomfort. It's inconceivable. You got a little stub in your toe, or a little stone in your shoe, or a little prick of a thorn in your foot or something, and it's like, his body was riddled with arrows and he wasn't feeling any pain. Just by how deeply absorbed was his mind and his consciousness in Krishna. So he's certainly eligible candidate for a spiritual destination. And our bhakti process is being compared in this little purport to the Ashtanga yoga process, which is mechanical. And it can bring one to the position of the mind absorbed in thought of the supersoul, but far more natural and far more powerful is this process of bhakti, where by love and devotion, one's consciousness is absorbed in Krishna. So that's our topic for this evening. Bhisma Dev is an example of a pure devotee. He's the topmost authority. He loves, because he loves Krishna, he also loves the Pandavas. He was really happy that Duryodhana lost, although he was the commander-in-chief of Duryodhana's army. He was really happy that Duryodhana lost and that the Pandavas won, and the Pandavas were going to become the rulers of the world. He was really happy, although he was in a lot of pain. Now he's free from pain because Krishna has come. And he's praying to Krishna that my mind, to the very moment of leaving this body, be absorbed in this image of you, in the chivalrous combat on the battlefield, protecting your devotee Arjuna. Beautiful scene. So let's see if there's some discussion. Mangal, the fan it's a little loud and it's blowing right in my eye. So if you could shut it off, that would be nice. Maybe open the windows or something. Oh, it's this one. It's this one. Right in my eyes. It's cool, but it's not comfortable. Okay. So anybody would like to discuss something? We have a little portable microphone.
Maharaj, I have a question about, it's a detail from the class. So one of the points that was made is that the worshipable deity of Bhisma deva is the four-armed form.
Yes.
So I was just wondering that, like, the image he has is that of Parthasarathi, where he's seeing Krishna as a charioteer, and like the like usually, like when we go through something, then we
Goes through some problem?
yeah, then our vision is that of our worshipable deity, but for him it's different. Like he's seeing Krishna in war. So like, is it different, or it's just the four-handed form of Krishna he's seeing? I feel like there's a disconnect for me.
Disconnect between the four-armed form and seeing Krishna on the battlefield?
Yeah, because he's like, it is his worshipable deity, but he's not seeing his worshipable deity when he's leaving the world. He's seeing Krishna as the charioteer.
Well, I think I get what you see as the disconnect, but I hope you can get that it's not a disconnect. Not a disconnect because when the four-armed Narayan appears in this world, he may appear as the chariot driver of Arjuna. He doesn't have four arms, but he's Narayana that's taking this position of the chariot driver of Arjuna with a whip in one hand and the bridle of the horses in the other hand. Two hands, not four. And on a chariot, not on a throne. This is his Lord Narayan. And he wants to remember his Lord Narayan in that feature, Parthasarathi. It's a mood of love. He loves Narayana in that feature, Parthasarathi feature. And so the Lord reciprocates with him according to his love. You know, from within, there's the illumination that he, Krishna, is Narayan. Now, he has knowledge. We're going to hear the next verse. Krishna has his feature in Vrindavan or Mathura as well. And he knows that about Krishna. But his Ishtadev is this Parthasarathi form. Yes.
Another follow-up question. So Maharaj, because it's also mentioned that like he was worshipping Krishna in the bhava of a servant, like Dasya Rasa. So can the servant of Krishna see Krishna in a four-handed form? Like,
Why not?
I thought devotees usually see him only in two-handed form, so I wasn't sure.
You what?
Like devotees usually see him in the two-handed form as Krishna, so that's why I wasn't sure.
Well, it depends on your devotion, how you see him. And he reveals himself according to devotion. I mean, let's say the worshippers of in Sri Rangam, they see Ranganath as a four-armed form. That they're aware that, and from their perspective, Narayana appears in various avatar forms. So they may see Lord Nrsimhadev, Lord Ramachandra, etc., etc., etc. These are avatars of Narayan from their perspective. So they can see the deity form, but they're seeing Narayan. The of Narayan means they're Narayan.
Maharaj, I have one more.
Yeah.
So, we actually recently, last week we went to a program where we had deities from Tirupati who were brought to Chicago, and then there was this event that happened. So they were actually doing sankalpa in that place, and part of the sankalpa was that they were chanting 4 different kinds of moksha, like Swarupya,
Yeah.
Salokya. So I was thinking, like, as Sri Vaishnavas, is their goal to attain moksha? Is that like, because they are devotees too, so.
I'm not so knowledgeable to be able to say definitively, but let's go to the Alvars, because they're exemplary in Sri Vaishnava tradition. And King Kulashekar, is one such example amongst of the Alvars, and his devotion was most elevated. And it wasn't only four-armed Narayan. So what was their destination was to be in service. And so then the destination doesn't mean a geographic location. Destination means a mood of surrender and service. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj. It's very helpful.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj. I had one question. We understand that we are powerless over our material proclivities, and but we also have a choice whether to choose Krishna or Maya.
Yes.
So how do we understand both of these things?
But easy. The first half of your question is, we're powerless because we're servants, and there's a greater, more powerful servant than us named Maya Devi, and her business in service to the Supreme Lord is to keep us away from him. And she's really good at it. And she's very powerful. And we on our own steam, on our own effort, we can't overcome. Now, the other part is, that's a choice. There's the 1 or 0 choice, and that's the 0 choice. Because of choosing to turn away from Krishna, we're powerless in the hands of Maya. We're a plaything in the hands of Maya. But we can flip the switch, because that's always an option for the living entity. Free will is always there. We choose Krishna. But supposing you just think, okay, I've had enough, I'm going to choose Krishna now. And it's not happening like that. Why is it not happening like that? Because we have this residual affinity for Maya. to say that we have free will doesn't mean we have unlimited free will. There's a how karma and the modes of nature work is like a rope. One of the meanings of guna is rope. So supposing there's a cow, and the villager has a cow on a rope, and in the morning they take the cow out into a field with a certain length of rope. They put a stake down, and that's the field in which the cow can graze that day, the length of the rope. Supposing the rope is made much longer, but it's still a rope, and there's still a stake, and they can't go beyond that. So there may be, for those in the mode of goodness, there may be more freedom. Modes of mode of passion, less freedom. Modes of ignorance, much less freedom. But freedom is there, but they're controlled by the boundaries of the length of the rope. So we don't have unlimited freedom. We can't just go wherever we want to go. The cow can't go wherever she wants to go. He's got a rope. Like that. So we're restricted, but we still have free will. And then when we choose, let me give my life to Krishna, he can remove the rope. But it doesn't have to just like we snap our fingers and say, okay, I surrender to you, take away that rope. I'm stamping my foot. You promised you give me freedom, so I want no more rope, please. It doesn't work like that. It can come in course of when we're qualified to be unfettered by any material conditioning, because our submission to Krishna is 100%, then there's no more rope. Complete freedom can be bestowed. But complete freedom is still a dependent freedom, isn't it? Yeah. And that's our nature. We're dependent beings. We're dependent. We're not independent. So that's how the two work. They're not contradictory. The first one is describing the condition where we choose to turn away from Krishna, and we're confined by the ropes, by the gunas. And there's a condition where one can become freed from the gunas, but it's not in our power to free ourselves from the gunas. When we situate ourselves in the shelter of Krishna, then we're under the control of his internal potency. Or you pick your control or controller, the illusory energy or Krishna's internal energy. But that's our position. We're servants with free will. And Krishna's the master. And depending on how we have regard for Krishna, that's what our experience is going to be. Because he reciprocates with our regard for him. It's actually very nice. I mean, it's a little puzzling in one sense, but it's actually very nice.
For the residue to go away gradually. For the residue to go away, it's a gradual process.
Well, to cross the finish line is a gradual process, but there's no guarantee that it's going to go away, even gradually. For example, supposing we, apply ourselves very nicely to go towards Krishna for some time, and then supposing we become a little complacent. Supposing. Sometimes that happens. So the submission slackens. And when submission slackens, the rope tightens. Prabhupada's explanation, I remember one morning class in Henry Street, Brooklyn, Prabhupada was saying, it's not that if you stop and cease or desist in serving Krishna, then you have to ask for Maya to come. Okay, Maya, I've served Krishna nicely for some time. Now you can come. Prabhupada said, she'll immediately be there. When submission slackens, Maya is immediately there engaging you in illusory activity. Immediately. He gave the example. Supposing you're facing the sun and you turn your back to the sun, what do you see? Not after some delay. There's shadow. Immediately. Maya is immediately there as soon as there's slackening. And then you turn your attention. It's toward Krishna. And that there's a choice, going back to your question. There's a choice. And, is it Krishna or Maya? Keeping it in really simple terms. Krishna or apart from Krishna, because there's no such thing as apart from Krishna. And to think that there's something apart from Krishna, that therefore up for grabs, I can become the enjoyer of that something because it doesn't belong to Krishna. I mean, we're not necessarily thinking that thought specifically, but it's up for grabs. I can make it mine and enjoy it. Means Krishna's out of the picture. Or Maya. And that's choice. You don't have to choose that one. You have a choice. And then you can go intermittently back and forth between the two. Submission and slackening, and submission and slackening. And that's often what people do. So I'm just responding. Yes, it's a gradual process, but it's not automatic or mechanical. It's devotional. You give your heart and give yourself to Krishna. That's devotion. And then it can slacken. And that's a choice. And there's a consequence for choice. And there's no delay in the consequence. Okay. Anybody else would like to contribute to this discussion?
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Today is also disappearance of His Holiness Bhakti Chavma.
Today?
Today, yeah, actually, 4th of July. Actually.
Oh, really?
We had some gathering.
Oh. I'm surprised I didn't.
I was supposed to come in the morning, get your blessing, but then I had to go. It was 10 o'clock program. So I had to leave.
Okay. For these things, normally I get like 16 reminders and invitations and things to say something, do something. This somehow didn't come this time. It just slipped right by me. Okay, 4th of July. I have my phone here. I'll read you something that somebody sent to me. I don't have my phone here. I'll say what I remember. Oh, here's my phone. Here. Bhakti Chur Maharaj, this is sent to me from Abhiram, dear friend of Bhakti Chur Maharaj. Class in Los Angeles, June 8th, 2013. That's just taken from his lecture. So many young Americans came forward to help Srila Prabhupada. Obviously, they were somehow previously related to him from their past lives. It was not just a chance happening. One devotee in a humble mood told Srila Prabhupada, quote, "Before meeting you, I was so fallen, so engrossed in all kinds of sinful activities, and you came and saved me." Srila Prabhupada replied, "No, your fallen condition was superficial. Semicolon. As soon as I called, you came." As soon as Srila Prabhupada arrived in America, all these young boys and girls came forward as if they were just waiting for Srila Prabhupada to come. By Krishna's divine arrangement, they were planted in different parts of the world, and when Srila Prabhupada came, they came forward. Some simple happening completely changed their lives. And there's a nice picture. I'll maybe send this to you. It's Bhakti Chur Maharaj playing harmonium. Okay. Anybody else wants to contribute something? Okay. Anything online? Okay.
There are two questions online from Sri Padma Manjari Mataji. First question, I heard some time ago that Lord Balram favored Duryodhana. Please help me understand this verse.
It is definitely mysterious, and the explanation that makes sense to me is Balaram was reciprocating with the devotion that Duryodhana had for him. His favoring Balaram was because, not exactly favoring him, but reciprocation with the devotion that Duryodhana had for him. While he seemed to favor him, he also knew that Duryodhana was diabolical. He also, that means, so in addition, he knew that Duryodhana was envious specifically of the Pandavas. That he was inimical to the Pandavas strongly, which meant that he was inimical to Krishna, and Balaram is not favorable to somebody who is inimical to Krishna. He was more inimical to the Pandavas, but inimical to the Pandavas means inimical to Krishna. So he wasn't partial to him. He was reciprocating with his devotion. And his devotion to Balaram largely was getting skills from Balaram. It was utilitarian, not precisely, the selfless devotion kind of devotion. Balaram was reciprocating with that. But look what Balaram did when Balaram went on behalf of the residents of Dwarka, the Vrishnis, to make a peace settlement when Samba was put in prison by Duryodhana. Samba wanted to marry Duryodhana's daughter, Lakshmana. So he went into Swayamvar, tried to take her away, was captured by by Duryodhana and put in prison. So there's going to be a big battle between this is before the Kurukshetra battle. There's going to be a big battle between the entire army of the Yadu dynasty and the entire army of Duryodhana. And Balaram, being a peacemaker, said, let me try to make peace. So he went, but when they insulted Balaram and insulted the Yadu dynasty in many ways, very insulting words, Balaram was ready to finish them. So, he was discriminating about, this showing partiality or favoritism. Krishna never did that with Arjuna or the Pandavas. Be ready to finish them. He never did that. So it was a very limited kind of show of affection to reciprocate with the affection, the manipulative and exploitative affection, at least to some degree, that Duryodhana had for Balaram. So it's a little perplexing. And here's another perplexing. It gave pleasure to Krishna to show kindness to someone who was inimical to the Pandavas, helped facilitate Krishna's and eliminating all of the members of Duryodhana's party in the Kurukshetra battle. Because Duryodhana did bad stuff. Anyway, it accelerated. It's something like Narada going to Kamsa and telling Kamsa Krishna appeared in Vrindavan. Take care of him. Protect your backside, Kamsa. Because he wanted to accelerate Krishna's pastimes. So it's a little bit like that element also. Balaram assisting Krishna's pastimes in some ways that are a little difficult to understand at times. Because it looked contrary. Having a friendly mood with Duryodhana, it looks contrary. It was to facilitate and accelerate Krishna's pastimes.
Second question from Shri Patma Manjari Mataji. I know Lord will protect me, but I feel bad. I don't have full surrender. I know Radha Krishna is the only shelter, but sometimes I get stressed out about things that I have no control over. Example, work life, etc. How do I attain full surrender while approaching obstacles in life?
Follow the example of Draupadi. Draupadi was being harassed. Draupadi was very powerful. She was a lady, but she was also very powerful. With one punch, she flattened Jayadrath, who was a powerful general. She just smashed him. One punch. So with her own strength, she was trying to resist Dushasana, but she was losing. Then she threw both hands in the air and called, Hey Krishna, Govinda. And Krishna reciprocated. There's a commentary, it's not within the Mahabharata, but later Draupadi said, why'd you wait so long? And Krishna said, well, you were doing it yourself. But when you gave your full surrender to me, then I came because you wanted me to come. So, the answer to her question is you have to let go of those things that are, we talked about it this morning in the morning class, those things that are the sources of our misery. We're not attached to the misery. We're attached to things that are sources of misery. And you have to let go of the things, the attachments to the sources of our misery. And transfer the attachment tendency to the attachment of being who we are. Now, that's easy to say, it's another thing to do, but you're asking the question what to do. That's what to do. You let go of the attachments to the temporary, which are the source of misery, and transfer that attachment to Krishna. And it's gradual for most people. Even when you know that's the right thing to do, you don't do it. Why? Attachment. What do you do about the attachment? Let go. Because the alternative is you just keep suffering because you're attached. You don't like the suffering, but you like the attachment. But you have to let go. And the alternative is not just let go and it's a free fall. You take shelter of Krishna instead. And Krishna's protection is there. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes when Hiranyakashipu was trying to kill Krishna, one of the things that he did was he had some men take him up on the top of a mountain and throw him off the mountain to smash his body on the jagged rocks below. So what did Vishnu do when Prahlad was flying through the air heading for the jagged rocks below? Vishnu didn't make himself visible. He wanted to see what Prahlad going to do. Is he going to scream? Is he going to panic? And he didn't. Then Vishnu manifested himself and caught Prahlad to protect him from falling on the jagged rocks below. So there are times, this devotee that's asking this question, where it looks like, I have to hold on. Even though I know holding on is the source of my misery. And Krishna may want to see, are you going to depend on me or you want to depend on yourself? Next.
Krishna Maharaj,
Hi, Krishna.
expanding on the question that the Mataji asked,
Yeah.
again, same question. Can you give some practical ways to pray Krishna when we are going through stuff like that at work?
Okay. We discussed this morning. You can hear the recording of the morning class. There's in the Vedic wisdom, there's this standard couplet, Jnana Vairagya. You familiar? So Jnana is to know who you are, and so part of knowing who you are is to understand who you're not. So there's the mind, and it's distinguishing between you, the observer of your mind, and your mind. You're the observer, and there's the mind, and the mind is like a screen, your computer screen or TV screen or some kind of thing. And then there's these images going on in the screen. And then you're having some feelings about the images going on in the screen. And then you're the observer of the screen and the images and the feelings connected with those images. And you're the observer. That's detachment. Jnana, Vairagya. So there's these situations going on in life. It's limited and temporary, but it's a beginning. Knowledge and detachment is a beginning. This stuff that's going on, the passing phantasmagoria of this world, is a passing phantasmagoria. It's not permanent. It's not me. It's not reality. And I'm immersed in the impermanent and the non-reality, and that's the problem. The problem isn't the situation. The problem is my identification with it. Okay.
Krishna, please help me get rid of identification.
This is a prayer. It's a prayer. That's another thing. There are a number of prayers where I have this knowledge and I have some sense of detachment, but to be honest, I'm still attached. So, Krishna, please give me the clarity. Please give me the strength. Please give me the wisdom. Not just like take the problem away, please, because it may not go away. It may stay for a long time. It may go quickly, may stay for a long time. You have no control over that. And it's not your relationship with Krishna. Please take the problem away, because then something else will come, and something else will come, and something else will come. So let me resituate myself consciousness-wise in my relationship with Krishna. She's absorbed in her cell phone. Oh, okay. I heard the ping. I thought that means you're trying to answer somebody's message. Okay. That prayer, but the best of our prayers is the Hare Krishna mantra. That's also a prayer. And if you chant the mantra prayerfully, that's what you're asking for. It's very simple. Because it's very simple, it's maybe too simple, but it's also very nice because it's simple. Oh, energy of Krishna, Radharani or Hara, please engage me in the service of Krishna. Oh, Krishna, please accept me. It's exactly what we discussed during the Festival of the Holy Name. That's just Prabhupada's words. It's a prayer for relationship. And the preamble of what you described, that's the consequence of being checked out in our relationship. Not Krishna's to blame. We checked out. We turned our back and walked. And there we go into this dark place looking for happiness, and we get something else. And it becomes a bad dream. It doesn't end. We pinch ourselves and we don't wake up. It's not over. It continues. So please bring me back to my original consciousness. But it doesn't happen like by snapping fingers. It took some time to get in our presence, so it takes some time to get restored. Something else online?
Thank you.
There is a comment now. Comment
A comment, okay.
from Shrida Prabhu. I heard this analogy from one senior brahmachari regarding how a pure devotee does not experience material pangs because he is overwhelmed in thoughts of Krishna consciousness. A single crystal of salt, when added in a full glass of water, does not make any difference because the amount of water and its taste overwhelms the taste of a single salt crystal.
It's creative. I don't know if that example has any basis in knowledge of disciplic succession, because it's not pure. Just looking at the example, you may not feel the strength of that saltiness, but it's not pure. So don't mix. Better is distilled water. You take that water that's had a grain of salt and evaporate it and let it become distilled, and then you get pure water. That's what we want. Not a little bit. We just want distilled. We want pure. Okay, I think we're done this evening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.